I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I'd like to take the answer to this question in a somewhat different direction. I mentioned in 2007 and 2008 we had a $5.8 million race followed by a $6 million race. Outrageous amounts of money were poured into these races, mostly for television advertising. Most of the advertising was done by a handful of interest groups. What I didn't mention is the nature of that advertising. It was gutter politics. It was some of the most misleading and often downright untruthful advertising you will see in political campaigns. And that's something that I think is really important to look at. In both of those races, what these groups did is they focused on an issue almost universally. Almost all the advertising focused on public safety, violent crime. Now the interesting thing is that the role of the Supreme Court has almost nothing to do with violent crime. The Supreme Court does not conduct criminal trials. It does not sentence convicted criminals. It's an appeals court, and it's an appeals court that deals almost always with civil cases, not criminal cases. It's relatively rare. The distinct minority of cases before the Supreme Court are criminal in nature. So here's a court that doesn't conduct criminal trials and doesn't sentence convicted criminals and primarily deals with civil cases, and all the advertising was telling us over and over and over again, we need to elect judges who will lock them up and throw away the key. We need judges who will be tough on crime and sentence convicted criminals harshly. So what we were being told about our Supreme Court had almost nothing to do with the actual function of our Supreme Court. We were being fundamentally misled about the nature of what the court does. And I think the result of that advertising is we were left collectively a little bit dumber about what the court actually does than we were before. And that's one of the really sad, one of the tragic things about these advertising campaigns. The other thing that is notable is that not only did the advertising have virtually nothing to do with the actual work of the Supreme Court, but it had absolutely nothing to do with the actual agendas of the interest groups running the advertising. We actually looked at their lobbying agendas. We looked at the bills that they lobby on. Public safety was nowhere to be found. They wanted to change the court primarily because of an interest in tax cases and corporate liability cases, product liability. They want a court that doesn't crack down on companies that sell defective products to consumers, and they want a court that will decide tax cases in their favor. That's why they really wanted to influence the makeup of the court. They made a calculation that if they told you that, if they told you if it was about taxes and product liability, you might not elect their favored candidates. So they decided to focus all their advertising on violent crime. And so one of the things about the role of the Supreme Court is that if you look at the advertising, you have no understanding whatsoever of what the Supreme Court actually does. And I think that's a real disservice to the people of this state.